following presentation is an Delmarva Studios production.
Welcome back, Truth Seekers. It's another edition of the Flat Earth Files. It's episode 28. And tonight we're going to have a conversation with Big Country, who is host of the podcast Whiskey, Beers, and Conspiracies. He is standing by. Before we get started, just a couple quick notes for you. I want to let you know that our website is up. It's got some pretty cool functions in there. There's a chat room. There's some videos. There's a little on the front page, something called a SpeakPipe message where you can click and leave me a message. I'll get a voicemail. And if you'd like, I can play it on the podcast. It is still a bit of a work in progress, but it's fully functional. And I hope you find it entertaining and informative, and appreciate any input that you guys have. Just leave it right there in the chat room or send me an email, as always, to the flatearthfiles@gmail.com. And the Rumble channel is also up as well. I should have a video up either tomorrow or Saturday, but I will also put that link in the show description so you can go ahead and go in and subscribe to the Rumble channel, because we will start doing some live video there, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. So there you go. As always, make sure you check the show description. In addition to the website and the Rumble channel, you want to make sure that you click on and check out Whiskey, Beers, and Conspiracies. And the host of that podcast is with us right now, and it's Big Country. Sir, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. So on your podcast, is each episode a little bit of each Whiskey, Beers, and Conspiracies, or you kind of talk conspiracies over a whiskey and a beer?
The latter sounds more appropriate, but I can't tell you that we haven't had the first one happen a few times. And I suppose it just depends on the topic, right? A lot of the conversations that we have are over certain conspiracies. On our show, we sometimes like to do true crime, cryptids, Bigfoot, stuff like that. And that's more or less to actually take kind of a step out of the rabbit hole a little bit per se,
right?
Because you need that mental break from time to time. You can't live in the rabbit hole.
100%.
But yeah, it's a show. It's been running about 4 years now. When we first started, we were under a different name. We had a fourth host. Our fourth host left the show for some personal reasons. We changed the name of the show and kind of rebranded. And it's been kind of just growing ever since. And then we just recently added a fourth host, so it's been a pretty wild ride.
That's awesome. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and also kind of your journey to the truth?
Yeah. So, excuse me. They give me the nickname Big Country. Not because I am from the South or even in the Midwest, even though that's where I live now. I was born and raised in California. I got the nickname because when I'm a journeyman inside wireman with the IBEW 124. And when I was in California, I was still an apprentice and I was going to school. And I always wear cowboy boots because I got a little country in me, you know. And I wore boots one day, and I used to chew a lot of tobacco and back in those days. And I used to pack like full bottom lip horseshoe of backer, you know. And one of my classmates was like, "Holy cow, that's a big lip. I like your boots. You're Big Country."
And Big Country was born.
Big Country was born, yeah. But as I said, I'm a full-time inside wireman out here. I live in Kansas now with my wife and our 2-year-old son. And that's a little bit about me. And to answer the other question of my journey to the truth, I can remember the exact day that it happened. But it wasn't until a couple years after that that it really kind of clicked for me. And I was actually in my AP US history class, and I was 17, and I had a classmate. His name was RJ. We were talking about 9/11, and he brought up the documentary called Loose Change. And I was like, bah, 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 no way, dude. Right? Because from the time it happened when I was 12 up until the age of 18, in my head, I'm going to war.
Sure.
And that was a full 6 years of that in a very pivotal young man's life.
Yeah.
Because it bred a level of hatred. I mean, we were just having this conversation, before we started recording, and like you said, we should have recorded that. But 9/11 was the catalyst for everybody, I think, that's awake now to what's going on. I don't know if that's, unanimously that way, but it was the catalyst, I think, for a lot of people. And that was my first one, was 9/11. And then the ball just kind of started rolling. In the early days of my youth and then growing into an adult, I used to listen to a lot of Alex Jones, and I'll admit that.
Oh, sure. We all did.
Right. We all started
Sure.
somewhere, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But and I think Alex is wonderful. I think he's an adult version of a WWE wrestler.
Yeah, 100%.
Like he never gets out of that character,
Yeah, he's like the Ultimate Warrior, if you remember that guy from the 80s.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, he's one of my favorites. Who actually changes his name to Ultimate Warrior. He's a whack job. But and then it just kind of blossomed from there, and I started expanding even more and trying to read more and do more research. Now that information was kind of steadily coming out about certain things on the internet, and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it was like, the school that shall not be named. You had the San Bernardino shooting, which actually is where I'm from, and during the shooting, I was at my parents' house still, and I didn't know a shooting was happening, but I was on the freeway, and it was a ghost town. There was nobody around anywhere. And it's one of the reasons we left California, because it's never like that. I think the only other time I've seen California like that least busy would be like the day after 9/11.
Yeah.
And then that's about it.
And what year did you leave
Really?
California?
2019.
Oh, so right before the world changed again.
Right before.
Gotcha.
Yep. Yep.
And so you're in your early 30s, right?
Yeah, I'm 33.
So there you go. It's and again, you've got a good head on your shoulders, and
Try to think so.
yeah, you really do. And I'm happy to hear the stories where people. So a young man sent me a voicemail yesterday, and he's 23, and it really makes me kind of happy that there's still a younger generation of people who aren't, because people always blanketly, they use the blanket term. All these young kids today, they're just all they worried about is video games, this, that, and the other thing. But there is, again, 9/11 was a big one, but I think for some other folks, it was retrospective. Like people have been busy their whole lives, nonstop working. There's single parents out there busting their ass to make ends meet. And then COVID happens, and all of a sudden everything stops. All the things that used to take up time, like driving to work, driving home from work, all those things kind of came to an end. And I do still think to this day that COVID they overplayed their hand just a bit. And with people sitting at home with nothing to do, started surfing the internet, going on social media, seeing this post about what is this about this school in Connecticut? What is this about 9/11? And all it takes for me, it was that one video. And you're like, and then of course you start to go down the rabbit hole, as they say. And, obviously there's thousands of versions of what happened on 9/11, who was responsible for 9/11. but most of us know that the official narratives are always a lie, whether it be JFK, Vietnam, so on and so forth. It's
Right.
you simply have to look at who benefits in these situations, and that usually is a pretty good directive at who was behind it. How did so you moved to Kansas 2019? And
Yeah.
I moved here back to Delaware from Texas. Literally weeks before February of 2020. How quick did you pick up on the quote unquote scamdemic?
Well, and at that time we had been into our show for a few years already.
There you go.
And we were actually very fortunate at the time that it happened as far as our move with the show, because it was just starting to come out, how we're doing shows now, right? Over the internet. But it was its own like server and its own app. So it was, a step above Zoom and this and that and Skype. And it was like just started getting hot. So we had tried a few different platforms. But I'm in Kansas at the time COVID starts, and Chris and Boy are still in California. And they're telling like the exact opposite story of what I'm telling is happening where I am. Now, that's not to say people weren't wearing masks out here. Of course they were. They were doing all these 6-foot stupid rules, right? And all this stuff was going on. But it was not as bad as how they were describing California. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And of course, having the show, we started asking questions, and they say, oh, it came from a bat. And then it didn't come from a bat. It was a weapons lab. And it was weapons, no, it was soup. No, it was Wuhan. It was Wuhan. And I actually remember seeing originally, I've only seen it one time. It was on the news during all this COVID stuff. It said viruses cannot live in an environment of 89.7 degrees Fahrenheit. And I don't think we were supposed to see that. That's probably why they only showed it once, because the human body is regulated at what? 98.5,
yeah.
98.6,
Yeah.
right? So automatically, not to get too far into germ theory, because I don't believe that anymore, then the virus shouldn't affect us at all, right? And after I saw that, and we were talking about it on the show, I would say about 6 months in, we were like, something doesn't look like the other, you
Right.
know.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought you fell off for a second.
No, I'm here.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. And I don't know. You're in Kansas. You probably didn't experience. Maybe you did. A lot of the tyranny that we saw in many of the major cities. Chicago. It's still to these days you see these people who still do the mask thing. Still push. Fauci came out either today or yesterday, and they're still pushing this jab. Did you? Let me ask you this first. And I asked this question. You're married. Is your wife, quote unquote, like awake like you are? Do you guys have the same things, or is yeah? Okay, good.
Oh yeah, and we've had we've told this story quite a few times on our show, but a lengthy process of getting to the place we are now together, because we've had some experiences with our son who is born now that actually made us change how we view like food and chemicals. Like we're almost 100% gluten-free, non-GMO, organic, no antibiotics. My son's never been vaccinated. And it was through a majority of research that we were doing together. And so COVID was something that actually made us, I think, a little stronger, because we were sniffing out the BS together.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said was it your son? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
2 years old.
2 years old. He turned 2 on Monday.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you had that year from literally from when COVID kicked off to when your child was born, and obviously, like prior to COVID, had you gone down the vaccine, the big pharmaceutical rabbit hole?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now
good.
I didn't stumble upon Dr. Thomas Cowan until right around the beginning of the pandemic, because I think one of the videos he did about 5G kind of went viral.
Yeah, it did.
Um, but it was more of like, I don't trust what's in the vaccines. And then when we started doing research on health, that's when we were like, okay, we really don't trust the vaccines. And then we started reading about vaccines, and we're like, yeah, vaccines are not for us. Um, and you'd be shocked, I mean, if you have some listeners out there that maybe aren't parents or are going to be parents. When we had the birth plan, because my wife went all natural too, we had the birth plan, and we said we're not going to vaccinate. 3 separate doctors came in to try to convince us to vaccinate our son.
No kidding.
Yeah. And I was like, why do you care so much, dude? It's not your kid. Now, they put up a fight, and of course it didn't happen. But that was, again, through Dr. Thomas Cowan, and then the research we did about health. So we're living, and I'll say too, a lot of people might think that's a little bit extreme, but we take it even a step further, as in all of our computers and stuff like that, anything that has Wi-Fi, the Wi-Fi is turned off, and I ran hard lines to everything, which is a faster connection anyways.
Yeah, and that's something I've been promising myself I would do, and I haven't done it. Shame on me, because I do think there's something to the radioactive sickness. And we will certainly talk about that stuff. But go ahead and continue. I'm sorry.
No, and like you said, I advise everybody to do this if you can. But we go as far as we don't use body washes, we don't use chemicals to clean our house. We use oranges and lemons, vinegar. Throw an orange down your garbage disposal. It does the exact same thing as pellets or whatever these other chemicals are in there. But it's we're actually reaping those benefits, because last July, so July of 22, was the last time my wife and son had been sick. Prior to that, it was 3 years. So we're starting to see, even if there's nothing to it, which I don't believe there is, there's a tremendous amount of studies out there that suggest that this is the case. We're reaping the benefits of these practices. So I kind of forgot where we were going with that. It was a long-winded answer.
No, you were just basically talking about the vaccines, and then you were really going out of your way with the 5G and hardwiring everything, just taking the extra precautions for your family.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I, our phone, we bought our phones in 2019, and they were still 4G. And we bought new phones because we took our honeymoon to Ireland, and we wanted good cameras, good video. Get back from Ireland, moved to Kansas a month later, and then the world shuts down 4 months after that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the vaccine thing was something that we looked at together. And even early in the show, on our show, when COVID happened, we were having conversations, because we were like, we haven't had any cases here yet, and but Boya, one of our co-hosts, was like, I bet you the first cases in either New York or California, because that's where they test stuff. And sure enough, these things started happening, and Boya was like the first one, and this was 9 months before they even talked about a vaccine. He was like, be sure that they will come out with a miracle vaccine, and do not take that shit. It wasn't hard to see the cards, because the way these people do it, they don't really change or deviate from the script. They just kind of give it a facelift.
Yep.
But it's the same thing over and over and over. I mean, even, if you look at Ukraine, the same thing, right? We had this rule on our show. We call it the 72-hour rule. Give it 3 days before
the true narrative comes out.
Exactly. Before, because I'll tell you, man, one of the craziest things that's ever happened on our show, and mind you, when we started, there's 4 of us. So you're talking to an electrician, a master mechanic, a HVAC technician, and a police officer. Like, that's the 4 hosts of the show. There was the 4 hosts of the show at the time. Like, you're just talking to normal guys. We just happened to do research in some off-beaten topics that is now, unfortunately, not readily available to everyone all the time.
Yep.
So we're just having fun with it. And one of the craziest things that ever happened was when we had this guy who'd reached out to us, and he became a big fan of the show, always involved. And he told us, because we had him on the show, he was like, if it weren't for you three, I very may well not be here right now. And we were like, what are you talking? What do you mean? Like, yeah, your show like saved my life. And that was the craziest thing because, in our heads, we're just blue collar workers with, a couple guys that sit around and drink and talking to a microphone.
Yeah.
But to see that it was impacting people in a positive way, we were like,
you away, doesn't it?
Yeah, and this is what we're here to do now.
Yep.
So, it was in a man. I don't know how to say this. Keep it rolling there, George. While I can gain my
no. I completely understand. I've gotten those emails before, and it really floors you to think that here I am, just some ordinary middle-aged dude living in the middle of nowhere who raises chickens and homesteads.
Right. Yeah.
I just had seen enough evil in my life, and when I really, like you, I had red pills thrown at me before. I kept my mouth closed like an angry little child who didn't want to take his medicine, even though I knew there was things wrong. But when I retired from the Army and I was working, 70 some hours a week in my retail business, I had a lot of time to finally sit down and confirm some of these thoughts that I had. And 9/11 was a real big one for me. I felt completely betrayed as someone who served 24 years and lost friends. It was, a couple more years of building up, and you look at your children and grandchildren, and like Bill Cooper said, what are we doing as parents? Patting our sons and daughters on the back and sending them off to wars that have nothing to do with our safety here in the United States. And I just sit behind a computer with a microphone and start talking. And I highly encourage everyone. I'm just a dude, and I really hope more people will do what I'm doing. Just we're all not going to agree on everything, right? On what happened on these quote unquote conspiracies, whether it be COVID. Some people will say it was the Wuhan lab. Some people say it's Fort Detrick, and that leads into terrain versus germ theory. And we're all going to have our slight differences, but we all know, anybody who's listening to this podcast, they understand that there's something wrong, right? There's something really evil going on out there. And this is just our small way of contributing to the fight. It's kind of the way I look at it.
Without a doubt. And I just remembered what we were talking, 72 hours, right? That was the rule I said that we had. And the reason we do that, like you said, for the real truth to come out, but also we have, I don't want to say it's a heavyweight because that makes it sound like a burden, because it's not a burden to us, but we have like a responsibility to make sure, because people seek our opinions on things.
Yep.
That I got to give you the best informed hypothesis of what could be going on that I can. And so that was why we kind of had that rule about, wait 72 hours. But, you look at Ukraine, we couldn't even wait that long before even people in the conspiracy community, or even because I've separated myself from the political spectrum.
Yeah, a lot of folks have.
I mean, but if you were to ask me, I'm more conservative than I am liberal. I have some liberal thoughts. I have a lot of conservative thoughts.
Yep,
but I'm like a disassociated part of the libertarians. I want the only thing I would ask of my federal government to do is to keep us collectively from legitimately being invaded, and that's it.
Yeah. That's it.
We'll figure out the rest.
Let Congress be in charge of the money, get rid of the Federal Reserve, get rid of every agency that has three letters, the IRS, ATF, FBI, CIA. Let the military handle all the intelligence issues. We have entire, units that are that strictly intelligence. Let the military take over. Unfortunately, people still buy. And I have even done podcasts because, listen, I was under that. They played us pretty good in 2016. I was under that the Trump potion because they pitted Hillary, and most of us know Hillary's a pretty evil person, so we're like anybody but her. And then not only did the dream not get swamped, it became filled again, and the guy he touted. I could go on and on and on. At that point, I said, it's two evil wings belong to the same evil bird, and I just don't want to be a part of it anymore. And I've come to realize that the federal government has just become such an anchor, such a weight. It's like that credit card with a $50,000 limit you have maxed out. You can only afford to pay a minimum payment every month on it. It's just a whale that is bludgeoning your life. And we need a complete fresh reset. We really, really do. You see, like you said, I champion everybody allowing to protect themselves and their family. If you want a cannon, you should have a cannon. There's a lot of people out there who think the Second Amendment is all about, you don't need a 50 cal to go deer hunting or an AR-15 to go deer hunting. It's just not about that. And that infuriates me.
Oh, absolutely. And they couldn't tell you the difference between a rimfire
right.
And they would have no idea, because everything to them is, big giant black gun scary.
Yeah, because they watch movies, right?
Exactly.
They picture Arnold Schwarzenegger with a saw, like an M249 or something, just chopping people down.
Yeah.
That's
as a matter of fact, that's actually the first thing my wife and I did when we moved out here after we got our driver's license. Is we bought guns, and we bought a lot of them.
Yeah, because
being from California, you have to sleep with the governor or something like that to get like a gun in California. It's ridiculous.
Crazy. It's sad.
Yeah,
it's insane.
But I real quick, I wanted to pitch this to you and your audience, and then I obviously will get to Flat Earth Files. That's what
for sure.
But I kind of had this recent theory as I was thinking about it, especially, as we get later talking about Flat Earth and stuff like that, CGI and all these things.
Yeah.
But there is, and this is my opinion, there is no way for me to validate the claim that we have a president right now, that he is living at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and that we actually have a functioning government. Because all I can verify is what I've seen on TV, and it's swung either left or the right. And there's all these anomalies, right, with the Biden administration. Like, he's always on a green screen.
Yep.
He's not. There's no, like, the 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is like boarded up right now.
Yeah, I think it's had fencing around it for the better part of the last couple of years since his ceremony, right, in January of 2021.
Yeah, and then you have him having to take his own jet to his own inauguration, and they locked him out of the doors. And then if you looked at the two different camera angles, Biden, like the weather was off, and all these weird things that are happening, right? But with Ukraine and things like that, they say, "Oh, the government just approved 40 quadrillion more dollars." Well done. A week later, here's another 800 gazillion bajillion dollars.
Every single week.
Every single week.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do I verify that that's even happening? I'm not saying they're not, but it just kind of seems like we don't have a government. It's like we're on autopilot right now.
Yeah, even the people at the very top on the conservative side, they champion this fight against Russia. They're all behind Ukraine. The Lindsey Grahams and... there's a few out there that are obviously, but the folks at the very top, they're all about sending them all our equipment, all our money, and they come on anytime they're behind a camera. They just tell us how important this fight is. And I go on Telegram and see some of these channels, and it's just these young men are getting mowed down every single day. And this could have ended last fall, but this quote unquote government said, no, we got to keep fighting, and just it's abhorrent. Let me ask you this then. If this is all a green screen show, is this a corporate takeover? Is this a bank takeover? Who do you think has taken over?
There's a lot of theories about that too. My best educated guess on that would have to have been some of the information that we were seeing at the time through different channels of Donald Trump is on their team, but he's like some rogue agent who has like a huge ego problem. So he actually did reset the United States, as in it's no longer a corporation, because this is also very interesting. If you Google, I don't use Google, I use Brave, but if you use Google, just type in Google,
Hmm.
so you know that I'm not making it up with some like conspiracy search bar.
Sure.
You type in Washington, D.C., it will pull up a picture of Washington, D.C., and it'll say Washington, D.C., formerly known as District of Columbia, which, depending on how deep you are in the rabbit hole, you know that the District of Columbia is not a state, it's a territory.
Right.
And that is where technically the entire government resides.
Yeah, similar
That's
to
why it was
what goes on in England with the city of London, that 1 square mile of where all the banks hang out, and they have their own
correct.
mayor.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then,
yeah.
you know, the birth certificates and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's no longer listed as District of Columbia. It says formerly known as District of Columbia. So when did that change? As far as I've always known it, the District of Columbia has always not formally been District of Columbia. And so maybe that something had happened there, and right now we're running on autopilot while everything starts to reset in whichever way it may be. Now that's the optimist in me, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. If someone is in control, is it the good guys? Is it the bad guys? It kind of seems like the bad guys are in control. But who knows? Maybe that's like the light at the end of the tunnel, that they're allowing the bad guys to appear in control while something good is happening in the back. I don't put too much weight into that, but I just always thought it was really weird that, especially with this administration, why is he never where he's supposed to be? And obviously, the dude that they prop up as Biden is not the real Joe Biden.
Yeah, I made a funny little 2 minute video last year with the ears, just all the. They're not even subtle differences from
Right.
just a few years ago. It certainly, and
Right.
listen, I don't think it would be. I mean, I think every leader has a body double, even in the Western world. So maybe that's it. Whether or not they've completely. I mean, you're also talking about a guy who's had 2 aneurysms. Back in the 80s, they literally had to take the top of his skull off to stop the bleeding. He's had two major. Now, obviously, was it these people mock us all the time? Is this all just a way to mock us? And the way you have people like, and that's the other thing. It's not that this problem isn't just at the federal level. You've got people like Whitmer, Newsom in California, and you can look at the Attorney General in New York State. She's having a big drag show party hosted by the New York City Library this Sunday. It's just that's what worries me. There's some kind of connection, both federal and at the state levels, and it's just trying to pinpoint where that connection is.
Yeah, I'll answer it like this. It's almost as if we're mimicking to the T the Weimar Republic before it fell.
Absolutely.
The printing of money,
Yep.
the degradation of society, the attack on the nuclear family, the normalization of homosexuality, which not my thing. Don't hate you if you are. That gets lost in translation a lot. Like, if I don't agree with a lifestyle, I must be a bigot.
Exactly.
The cross-dressing, the switching of genders. I mean, this is Weimar Republic to the T.
Yep.
I mean, the banks becoming insolvent. I don't know if you guys are any history buffs out there. You know what happened with the Weimar Republic after it collapsed, and the banks just kept printing money to get themselves out of debt. They were carrying wheelbarrows of money down the street to buy a loaf of bread.
Yep.
Because there was no, value in their dollars that they print, and that's exactly what the government is doing right now.
Yep.
But you better pay your taxes. Or
You
go to
better
jail.
pay your taxes. And that's what I tell people. Why are you paying taxes to an illegitimate government? Because if you feel, and I'm not telling everybody's got to do their own thing. But if you feel that this was a rigged election, and are we really being represented properly with our tax money being thrown out every week? Why do we continue to pay taxes? At some point, there's got to be we have to up the level of civil disobedience, do we not?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more with taxes. And we've done a show about taxes, and some experts out there in that realm have come on the show and talk about it. And it's I again, you got to do your own research. I'm not telling you what to do here, but I personally don't know anybody that's ever been arrested for not paying their taxes. And I currently know people that I work with. They said, I haven't filed taxes in 10 years. He files exempt on his W-2s. You never file them, and then nothing ever happens. I think these examples that they show you on TV of like Wesley Snipes getting arrested for federal tax evasion.
Right. That's the January 6th effect. They want to scare you.
Yep. Yeah, they're scaring you because if we can catch a big, powerful, rich celebrity, we can get you to.
Absolutely.
I think that's all that is.
It's funny you mentioned the Weimar Republic. I have a little Gab account. I don't get on there too much because just there's so many social media platforms. But I had seen and reposted something that said Weimar conditions require Weimar solutions. Watch the Europa: The Last Battle. If you have 11 hours, watch Europa: The Last Battle.
Dude, we just became best friends because
it's life changing.
That's besides the mud flood. Like the mud flood was the biggest shock to me because I thought like I was black belt level conspiracy theorist, Mm-hmm. And then I found out about the mud flood, and it goes into Tartaria, and then it goes into fallen angel blood, and we'll get to that later because my wife is Rh negative, O negative.
Oh wow,
yeah, she's got that damn angel blood in her. But the I said mud flood was the biggest one at the first, and then damn, what was I saying? What was the biggest
mud flood? Tartaria,
something. What was after that though? You asked me if that was the biggest.
You mean Europa, the actual documentary itself?
Yeah. Oh yes. So mud flood was the first big one. Okay, and then I watched Europa, and I went, oh dear Lord. What have I been taught? I was 32 when I watched that. It was last year. And I knew about World War II and all that stuff and learning in history, and I watched that. And obviously, if you do have 11, 12 hours to watch the documentary, I recommend it. But you also have to recognize sometimes propaganda, even though it's propaganda, is true. And some of it is just propaganda.
Yep.
But you got to do your best to research after that. And I love that they actually linked a lot of their sources and material for that documentary, but expand on the research from that and then draw your own conclusion. Exactly. I don't want to necessarily give my conclusion about that because I don't want to get your show in trouble because I like your show. But, just got to do your own research is all.
100%. And we can definitely come back and talk about that, but let's go ahead and kind of switch over to when, through all of these quote unquote conspiracies that you came across, when did you finally decide to lower your shield just a bit and take a look into flat Earth?
2017. And I'll tell you, the guy that mentioned it to me on the job site, this was in California. I was in California still. On the job site, we're building this new addition to this casino. And the guy, because I was talking to my coworker about conspiracies. Yeah, I got a podcast, and he was like, "Hey, have you guys ever heard about the flat Earth?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, look it up." And admittedly, the guy that told me for sure smoked meth. Like I work around dirt bags and construction workers, right? These are grimy guys. And you just kind of know meth mouth. I grew up in the little bit of the hood of California, so. But I was a little bit upset about it because we were actually starting to take our show at that time very seriously, right? So we didn't want something poo-pooing the other important things that we've been talking about, 9/11, Sandy Hook, even further back, the Gulf of Tonkin and all these other things that we would talk about. So I went out to look into it and then disprove it. And it took me 5 years before I put my name next to that field of thought, we'll call it, of flat Earth.
So literally just last year?
Yep. And because that's a big one, right?
Absolutely. There's no faster way to lose your friends and family, right, than to come out and say you're a flat earther. And interesting. I just did a flat Earth roundtable with a couple of shows that were involved with
with like a side project that we have, and we did one about flat Earth, and the question was asked like, if you believe in flat Earth, basically, excuse me, you believe in the biggest conspiracy of all time. Now, you could say that that's pretty much all of history, right? But, and I thought about that, and everyone's like, well, why is it the biggest? Because if you're in the conspiracy world, like a lot of us are,
Uh-huh.
and you are already against the fight of New World Order, Illuminati, 13th family, whatever you want to call it, right? Jesuit priests, whatever. Um, the shape of the earth doesn't change your fight because you're already on our side. You're already with us in this not side. I don't want to make it sound like it's a team thing, but and I understand that because Boya, our co-host, is like, I'm not married to the ball. I lean a little bit more flat, but he's also the co-host, and we're like talking about, don't take vaccines, don't do this, do your own research. Ukraine's this,
Yep.
So I understand that perspective too. But it's the biggest of all time because it's something that they have to lie about every single day.
Yep.
So if you look at take JFK for example, if you think Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone shooter, you were the crazy one, right? Multiple shooters, who however many agencies were involved. We had a guy that came on our show and was talking about it. He linked a lot of it back to the Jesuits. Sprinkle a little bit of everything else on top. But regardless, how long do you think that they had that planned for? 5 years in advance, 2 years in advance, 3 years in advance, 1 year after to clean up, all of the eyewitnesses.
Yeah, was it 200 people they took out afterwards that were?
Yeah. Yep. And then it's done. Even if new information comes out about it,
who are you going to hold accountable? They're all dead.
Exactly. Who are you going to hold up accountable? And it's done.
Yep.
So it doesn't necessarily change anything other than, it puts another drop in the bucket for people not trusting the government. But like, if they're lying about where we are, they have to lie every single day. It's not just going to go away. So I think that's why it has the weight that it does, in my opinion.
That's a great point. And they continue to rub it in our face every day. And it's interesting. I've talked about this several times. My wife and I, we don't have cable. We don't really watch any of the shows, but we'll go back and watch old programs. Like even we'll sit around and watch Leave It to Beaver. And you can see at about the second season, which was either 58 or 59, like there's literally a globe in probably 5 of the 22 minutes of the show. Like the Ward, the dad, Hugh Beaumont, he'll sit down right next to a globe and talk to Beaver. All of these shows, right about the time 1958-ish, when I think they really thought, because I think that was about the time with Operation Dominic and Fishbowl, and they're trying to blow holes through when they really realized that we're in this enclosed atmosphere within a firmament. When they said, listen, if these people really find out that what's in this book is true, we're going to lose some traction here. What are we going to do for Team Evil? And of course, they remembered their old buddy, the Jesuit Copernicus, and they really, really ran with not only the ball, but they had the technology available. And I think they knew, again, War of the Worlds, I think they're like, I think we've got something here. I think these people will believe anything we tell them. Yep. And then Edward Bernays came along and proved them right on so many occasions. He could make Americans believe anything, whether that cigarette smoking was good, that drinking fluoridated water was good. And I think in the 50s they realized as long as we put it on the television, they'll buy it. And Nixon said the same thing in 1970 or 71, that people won't believe it until it's on the television.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, I was just going to say too, I thought you were going to go along the lines of my wife and I, that we do, like, as we had talked about before we started, in my opinion, the 90s was the last greatest decades.
Yep.
And I vicariously live in the 90s. Like, I have a VCR, we have VHSs. I'm collecting some VHSs for my son to watch, and I got all the old game systems, and Saved by the Bell, Tool Time, all these shows watching through that decade was because everything was great.
Yeah.
Um, but something about like 9/11 just changed everything. But now on the flat Earth point that we were discussing, so it took me a while to get there, but mind you, when I got into it, I could find whatever I wanted. You could go to YouTube, you could just type it in Google, you could find flat Earth pros, cons, proofs, debates, and then right before the election is when the hammer came down, specifically for some reason on flat Earth. Now, the naysayers out there, it was not that long ago where you could literally just go to YouTube and type in flat Earth and you'll get, flat Earth proofs, this, that. Now, all you get is flat Earth is stupid, flat Earth debunked.
Yeah, Professor Dave crushes flat Earth Dave. And
Professor Dave, he's not even a professor.
No.
Right? And so you have to start asking the question, why? Listen, it sounds crazy. It does. But that's only because, like you said, we've been indoctrinated since the time we were brought into this world that the Earth is a spinning ball. So you're talking about breaking however old you are, whenever it might have started for you. Let's just say it started when I was 30. They would have to be, I'd have to be cracking through 30 years of programming.
Yep.
That's why it's really hard for a lot of people, and I get it. I totally get it. It's not like everyone can just take, 2 red pills and they're good to go to fight the Matrix, but it's a big leap. It's a big step.
It is, especially to come out of the closet as such. I always, think if you found a guy who was stranded on a desert island, never read a book, never saw a television, just born and raised on an island, and you walked up to him and you gave him the 2 theories, which one is going to make more sense to him? Which one is he going to believe? He's going to believe that anybody who thinks we're on a ball that's spinning, that holds all this water, but won't pull down a cloud with, thousands of gallons of water in it, he's going to think that we're the nut jobs, right?
Right. Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at now with my flat Earth research. Because when I started out, it was kind of very elementary, not poo-pooing on anything here.
Mm-hmm.
Elementary level questions about those things. Like, yeah, it is kind of weird that all the stars are the same, right?
Yeah.
Or it is kind of weird that I can see too far. Yeah, and I don't believe in the moon landing, so I'm going to go a little deeper and go a little deeper and go a little deeper. Now, as great as all of those things are, and I'm not, if that's where you're at, that's great because that's where I was. But the deeper you get, the more complex the research becomes.
Yes.
And recently, I've been more involved with the logical debate side of flat Earth versus globe. And I got involved with watching Nathan Oakley 1980, and he does a 24/7, or he does a flat Earth debate live every day on YouTube, and they're on episode like 1300 or something like that. And I started listening to these, and listening to them, and I'm like, literally, the people that believe in the globe cannot even logically substantiate the claims that they make without presupposing something.
Right.
Whether that be the circumference, the radius, the distance to the sun, the distance to the moon, the distance to the star. It was really fascinating to see, and that's kind of where I've been more involved of recently.
I want to kick myself because a couple of the interviews ago, somebody had mentioned that, what is it, Nathan Oakley, 1980?
Yep.
Yep. And I still, that's tomorrow's one of the few days I have down. I'm going to spend tomorrow afternoon watching some of the videos because that's the kind of stuff, the more advanced stuff, because we all know we can see too far. The big one for me was, you're telling me the moon, which is right there, is 239,000 miles away, and the sun that is right there is 93. I mean, that's just a huge, Do people really understand how far 93 million miles is?
Yeah. Don't worry, it happened by chance and by pure magic, and it's perfect. Gotcha. And here's the thing, we talk a lot. I've listened to your show, obviously, and that's how I sent you the email. But you talk a lot about the Bible, and I myself am a Christian. And that's unique to me, as in I'm not necessarily associated with the church. We've been associated with churches. We were part of a church out here, and then it got weird and cliquey. And
yeah, that's a story I've heard all too
anti-Christian.
often, and it's sad. I was in the same situation.
Yeah, and then we went to one church, and it was a Holy Roller church, and I didn't know that until the service was like 2 hours long, and my wife was like freaking out because they're doing all this.
Speaking in tongues.
No, I did tell my wife. I said I know what this church is, but it was like the I said to your Lord a prayer thing, and that one guy had a tambourine in the crowd.
Oh, gotcha,
I told my wife,
gotcha.
I said, if they start speaking in tongues,
We're outta
we're
here.
drawing our pistols and we're moving towards the exit in a tactical fashion because we are not staying here. Next thing you know, they'll bring out snakes in the Kool-Aid. But that position is unique to me because I feel like I more or less have a relationship with my Creator.
Yeah.
Not to say that I don't read the Bible, I do. But because I'm actually writing a book about flat Earth.
Really?
It'll be out this year. I'm almost done with it. I'll send you the link for it, and you can post it. We're doing pre-orders on our site right now.
Do you have a title yet?
Yeah, it's called "The Pawns in a Game: The Flat, Motionless Earth."
Congratulations! That's outstanding.
Yeah, so it'll be done. It'll be done this year for sure. But the like the question of flat Earth was always intriguing to me. And actually, the first person I had interviewed about flat Earth, because a lot of people talk about Nathan Oakley or the Mark Sargents and the
David Weiss.
the David Weiss.
Mm-hmm.
I actually interviewed because I saw a lot of his videos. Allegedly Dave, and he was real big on YouTube at the time. Black British guy.
I know who you're talking about. Sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I listened to that guy, and then I started doing more research, and man, it just flourished into this 6-7 year journey that I've been on, and it's a great one. And so earlier I was saying, that I'm more into the debate side of it, and what's interesting is that I would. Your listeners can do this. If you look up the word axiom or you don't know what the word axiom is, basically it means a self-evident truth, right? The appropriate axiom of flat Earth is that it is a self-evident truth that the Earth is flat and non-motionless to our senses.
Right.
So, and this is ubiquitously true. You can't go somewhere in the Earth and experience spin. Now, the claim that the Earth is a globe is a positive claim, which needs evidence. And when you start going through what they tell us, they don't have any.
No.
And I think what they partially do is they count on people's ignorance to not understand complex equations, big words, right? Because obviously the public school system is doing a crack-up job. That you won't look into it any further. And then people started to. Now, this is nothing new, right? I don't know, George, if you've read a book or have heard of a book called Terra Firma.
I've heard of it. I don't believe I've read it.
Okay, yeah, I'm almost done with it now. That book was written in 1901, and they were having a debate about spherical Earth versus flat Earth.
Yeah, it's been going on
So it's not
for
this archaic
long time.
idea.
Yeah, anything on YouTube that is flat Earth related, it will have the Wikipedia little notation on it that flat Earth is an archaic theory, blah, 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 blah. So even if somebody who comes on it, they're going to say, oh, this is stupid. There's a warning on the video.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's just kind of weird that it's like this so much for flat Earth. And I know some people I've heard out there say like, "Oh, flat Earth is a psyop. It's to keep people fighting about something that doesn't really matter." Well, it does matter.
Absolutely.
And I think anything could become a psyop if you make it that for you. Um, some people like to focus on different topics. We focus on a lot of them. Flat Earth just happens to be one of my favorite because I've been in the research for this long. And if I can give you my three favorite flat Earth proofs, that's okay with you, George?
Please do. And then we're going to come back to the Terra Firma book. I didn't mean to throw you off there.
No, yeah, absolutely.
What are your three proofs?
So three proofs for me. Um, in no particular order, but there is the observation of things too far,
Yep.
proven with numerous observations. One particular, I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called the Black Swan.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Uh, okay. The second one is no proof of axial rotation. And one of the larger proofs for axial rotation is Foucault's pendulum. I don't know if anybody knows about that. But that one's nonsense, and we'll get to that. And then the third, and for me, this was like the nail in the coffin, was gas pressure without containment, which is a violation of a natural law. So, that might be like a little bit more complex to maybe what some of your listeners are used to. But just letting everybody know, this is kind of where my research over all these years have taken me.
Well, your third one, the gas without containment, doesn't
Yeah.
they say space is a vacuum as well?
Correct.
So
You have a
those-
high pressure system next to a zero or low pressure system, that is a violation of natural law. It's the second law of thermodynamics. Something called entropy would take over, which in short means that gas will fill the available volume. And so the only way to obtain gas pressure is it has to be in a container. It's even in the prefix of the word press.
Yep.
But molecules, in order to be pressurized, have to have a wall to bounce up and down. And they don't lose force because those bonds between the two are elastic, which means no energy is lost when it bounces off the containment and it creates pressure. The common response to that, and it's so stupid because they don't have evidence to support the claim, is gravity is what holds in gas, and gravity is the barrier.
Gravity, another magical theory, right?
Well, I'll even in a debate accept that answer. Okay, so your hypothesis is gravity. Excellent. Now test it. I want you to pressurize gas without a container using only gravity. Prove your claim. Now, it doesn't take a scientist to know that that's physically impossible. And generally what they say is, well, what you're asking for is not feasible because I would have to create something the size of the Earth, presupposed, in order to gravitate enough mass to pull at the rate of gravity, 9.82 meters per second, downward acceleration, to pressurize gas without a container. So what you're asking is ludicrous. I'm like, well, in a debate, you made a hypothesis and a claim, a positive claim, and backed it up with no evidence. So your point is mute. Did that make sense, George?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Sorry. I don't know if I'm
you're
going
all over
over
it, man.
anybody's.
I'm just listening. While you were talking, it always reminds me about Nikola Tesla, who always said that these frauds like Einstein, et cetera, would replace actual experiments with math problems.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's essentially what it's come down to. And even because I have a chapter in my book, it's called "Math Will Be Their Downfall," and it's because they give geometric locations to mathematical equations that dictate it has to be where it is, and it's provably not. And the math that they do for all these equations that they come up with, they're always presupposing the radius of the Earth, the circumference of the Earth. They're changing their numbers so that their math equation works. Like math is just an explanation of science, and science is just cause and effect, right? So I could write an equation as to why a banana is yellow, but that doesn't make the banana yellow. Well, that's a lot of the times what they do with their math. It's all hogwash.
Yeah, I think what they do is backwards math. They said this is the number we need to make it work. Now we need to come up with some configurations to make sure that that's the end state that we want. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. You'd mentioned your other one was the black swan theory, and I don't know, maybe it's a year or two ago. The crown prince of scientism, Neil deGrasse Tyson, had mentioned that. That people that the flat earthers who champion that photo are cherry picking data with that.
Yeah, it's really interesting because out of all of the evidence that I found supporting flat Earth, right, and again, if we're looking at it from the appropriate axiom, is that our senses tell us that there is no spin and there is no curve. I call a lot of those circumstantial evidence because discrediting NASA, which is not hard to do.
No, not at all.
Not at all, right? Doesn't prove the Earth is flat.
Correct. Yes.
But it does lead me to believe that the people behind that are telling some more lies. And I would say that that's circumstantial evidence to support the flat Earth claim.
Here's a random question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the money that goes to NASA and the money that goes to Ukraine goes to the same bank account?
Sure.
Agreed.
100%.
Yep.
I think NASA's a slush fund.
Yep.
Like, give me 10 things NASA has done for the advancement of humanity.
And how is it
besides memory foam? I guess
I don't mean to jump all over the place here. I'm sorry, but
no.
How is it we can send a rover to Mars and take pictures, but we can't take a true picture of the Earth?
It doesn't work like that, George. Come on, they can't just turn it around.
They can take a picture.
Before,
they can take video, I should say, of the Apollo mission taking off from the lunar module taking off from the moon. Remember, the camera kind of pans up as it takes off.
Yeah,
but they can't turn around, spin it, and show the Earth.
The level of skill that man had to follow the shuttle back is incredible. Being it was all remote, I guess. Yeah, it's silly. I don't know if you saw that DART video that came out of that supposed rocket or whatever they shot up there to collide with an asteroid.
Oh, yeah. Armageddon
right.
Part
yeah.
2.
Yeah, so we saw that, and we played a clip of it on our show. And Chris and Boya have their own opinions about it. I think they're a little more flat than they are round, obviously. But as I send them more stuff about NASA, they just laugh about it. They're like, God damn it, man! I like Star Wars is really cool, man. I want Star Wars to be real, but damn it, it's all fake.
I honestly do believe that one of the reasons that people won't buy into flat Earth is because it destroys. People do love the whole space theory, and people grew up with their telescopes and Star Wars and all of this. It just destroys their whole. In some cases, it destroys their whole childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those ones where you start to question your own sanity. Like, we've done shows on Jimmy Savile and the Finder's Cult and all these things, and those are some dark episodes, right? Yeah. When you look at flat Earth, you're like, man, am I going nuts?
Yep.
Because this goes against everything that I've been taught. And actually, getting back to what we were talking about earlier about the Bible, and this is leading me into my point, is that in the event that the Earth is flat, stationary, everything revolves around us, there's no getting out. That means we were put here.
That's right.
That means the cosmic accident that created everything perfectly did not happen. And then that would be a complete shift in the academic paradigm. There's no need for astrology. There's no need for astrophysicists. There's no need for all these different sciences and maths because there's no leaving. I mean, you'd probably crash the economy.
Yeah, could you imagine the president talking about how they're going to have NASA get a payment program back to the taxpayers?
Right, exactly. And I've heard that argument too about well, it's a giant slush fund for our taxes. Well, they're only like 22% of the budget. I'm like, let's not divert here. No. We're talking about someone openly lying to you about the biggest lie ever told.
Yep.
And then you're paying for it. And technically, your children's children are paying for it.
And it's being used by the CIA and all the terrible things that you see go on in the world. That's part of the funding.
Yeah. If you ever wonder who overthrows a government, it's called the CIA.
Yep.
Yeah, it's silly. It's but to the Bible thing, you said, mention a creator, and I know that might turn a lot of people off, especially if you're like a staunch atheist. I think all real staunch atheists are actually deists at best. I don't know if anybody truly does not believe in God. I think that's why a lot of scientists ridicule the idea of flat Earth, and they've been ridiculing it before because they're so mad at the fact that there is a creator that they'll do anything to not let it be true, even if that means making up what's that dark matter and stuff. The stuff that they said, that's all of it is dark matter. What is it? Not sure. Never found it. Like, then why are we even having this conversation?
Yeah. It's when I came across flat Earth and finally gave it the time of day, I'm not lying when I said I barely slept for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
9/11 was one thing, and I think I was more mad than I was anything when I finally took the time and realized that it was the biggest stab in the back. But when I found out that when I finally took the time and I said, okay, I'm going to disprove this and move on with my life, and then 2 weeks later I'm on my 3,000th cup of coffee, and I've burned through videos, books, web pages, and did some math problems. Went down. We live by Ocean City. My sister has a place down there. We start pulling in things that have gone over the edge and doing the math, and it's just like they're not lying about some things. This world is one giant deception, and it's a multi. It's those old multi-layer things like Amway and those Ponzi schemes, right? Where you bring somebody like Amway and all the other ones they've had. They bring somebody in, then they bring somebody in. There's so many layers to this onion. And the fact that they can lie about man's greatest accomplishment, which is, on paper, the moon landing, well, then they're going to lie about everything. And they do it so well. They started, again, the globe is on every TV show, every movie. You don't really pick it up until you become hip to this. And then you start seeing, oh my gosh, it's literally at the beginning of every movie, whether it's Universal, Paramount, they all have the ball, the big, and then there's globes throughout it. This is constant. And I always go back to that movie, They Live, 1988, Roddy Piper.
Roddy Piper. I have that on Blu-ray, actually.
I do too, brother. And we watch it about once a month. And sometimes you just want to grab people, put them in a headlock, and put the glasses on and say, look, it's all a lie. Look on your dollar bill. Why is there tiny little owls on your money? Why is there an all-seeing eye on your money?
Novus Ordo Seclorum.
Yeah, it says New World Order right on your money. Why is there a giant
it's a conspiracy?
Why is there a giant phallus in Washington D.C. that is exactly 6,666 inches? It's 55 feet 5 inches. Just all of it, and it's because what Bill Cooper said. It's bread and circus, and we've become as a society, because we have just decimated And this was another thing. I don't want to venture too far off flat Earth, but when you really realize that we live comfortably because we have decimated so many countries and taken their resources, that's another reason why I decided to get behind the microphone and kind of try to get the truth out there. But
Yeah,
the flat Earth was a big
absolutely.
one. That's the ultimate lie, and this is a very important one. Some people will say exactly what you said. What difference does it? What does it make? It makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Actually, that's one thing that allegedly Dave said on one of his videos. He's talking about the importance of flat Earth. He says, "Well, I was an atheist, and when I found out about flat Earth, found out that there was a creator, and then I asked myself, if there's a creator, I better find out what he wants. And it just so happens that there's a few books out there that gave us pretty good instructions on what he wants us to do while we're here."
Yep.
And I was like, wow, that was extremely well put. I mean,
Yep.
honestly. But yeah. Do you want to talk Black Swan? I know we're kind of rocking and rolling here, but
Yeah, absolutely.
okay. So the Black Swan is an observation off the coast of California that took place, and the debate channel. You'll probably see this a lot on Nathan Oakley's channel once you watch it. Here is called a modus tollens argument. Are you familiar with that, Greg?
No.
Or George, sorry. So the modus tollens is if P, then Q, if not Q, therefore not P.
Gotcha.
It's another way of saying if A, then B, if not B, then Z.
Right.
Or then B, then A. So it goes like this. If the Earth is a sphere, P, and with a circumference of XYZ and a radius of 3,959 miles, that's the radius.
Yep.
Then, Q, the distance to the horizon can be no more than 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. It sounds complicated, but it basically means that because of their math, you can do math against their math and figure out how far must the horizon be, because it's an must be logical argument, must be at this distance. Has to be. Their math dictates it. Black Swan is a photograph of a 1 foot observer height times 1.22 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, which is basically 1 times 1.122, which is roughly, once you do the math out, about 1.5 miles. That's where the physical curve of the Earth should start based on their math and geometry.
Right. You shouldn't be able to see past that.
You should not be able to see past of it.
Correct.
That's the curve. That's the things that cause boats to disappear from the bottom up.
Right.
Even though you can bring it back in with a zoom. This photograph shows the first oil platform at, I think, 3.9 miles. And the second platform is at like 9.74 miles. And the horizon is behind that. But their math dictates that it has to be at this 1 mile mark or 1.5 miles or whatever it is. But we know the distance to the oil rigs behind it, and the horizon is over 9 miles away, which should physically not be possible on a geometric sphere that they give us their math for.
That's right.
Now, they talk about refraction. No one denies the fact that refraction exists, but they're leading you to believe that. Actually, McToon said this in a debate. I don't know if you know who MC Toon is. He's a globe proponent, but he does like flat Earth debate videos on YouTube.
Gotcha.
Oddly enough, he's not banned.
Of course.
But in like 3 months, I'm actually debating him on our channel. But
Oh, that's awesome.
he said that there is a geometric curve, an actual curve to the Earth where it should be, but you will never, ever see that physical horizon because of refraction and all these other things. There's only the apparent horizon, which oddly enough, the scientific definition for the horizon is the apparent location where the sky meets the ground. And that location changes all throughout the day, depending on atmospheric conditions,
Sure.
wind, rain, high tide, low tide, all that stuff. fog, all kinds of these different things that will affect that throughout the day. So they're telling you that the geometric curve is there, even though you'll never see it, but the apparent horizon keeps moving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth because it's being refracted off the actual physical one that you don't ever actually see.
They always have an explanation. And again, I think they used for that Black Swan event, I think they used the same excuses they did for the Bedford level experiment back in the 1880s. It was, it was atmospheric refraction.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because then when you ask which refraction is happening here? And they don't want to tell you which one because there's not just refraction.
Sure.
There's just a bunch of different types of refraction. But to me, that's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. As far as like, it's there, but you'll never ever see it. But it is physical. Like, that is an oxymoron.
It sounds like a used car salesman talking.
Right.
Yeah. It's got
Right.
cruise control. You just don't see it on the switch.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like new.
Like, no, exactly.
Yeah. And they do this with almost everything, right? Any kind of math you want to talk about. It's always like, presuppose this, assume that, use the radius value. How do you know what the radius is? Because it's been measured. How did you measure that? All these different things, but when it comes down to the math, is like where they kind of really start to put their foot in their mouth.
Yep.
And this is towards the end of my research that I've been gathering. So hopefully this isn't going over anybody's head.
No, I think you've done an outstanding job presenting it in a way everybody can understand. One thing I don't think we've really even touched on yet is Antarctica. What are your thoughts on Antarctica?
It's interesting because I don't subscribe to a model or a map. I think there's two reasons why I don't do that. One, when you subscribe yourself to a model, you open yourself up for fallibility, in which they'll essentially harp on that issue. If something's wrong in your model that doesn't work, that you forgot about, missed, whatever, they'll trash your whole model, except for the globe. They don't do that for the globe. But I just don't think there's enough information to even really put together a working model because the information that we still don't know is too vast. But Antarctica is an interesting one because I could see how all of the continents are in the center, surrounded in a pool of water, and Antarctica is what keeps it all in, kind of like a bowl almost, or a plate. And I think that there is a dome. I believe there's a dome, right? If I believe it, I could show you circumstantial evidence that would suggest that there is a dome, right? Project High Jump, Operation Dominic.
Yeah.
And then the Antarctic Treaty. But then you have, of course, Admiral Byrd's accounts and Captain Cook's accounts that he couldn't find an inlet when he sailed around Antarctica. And I am also open to the idea, again, no evidence to support this, of extra land, other than based on similar testimonies. I watched a very interesting documentary. It's another long one. It's like 8 hours. It's called The Lost History of Flat Earth.
Yeah, I think that to Flat Earth is what Europa was to just truther in general, right?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. It took me a while like I had to step away from that one because I was like, oh, like literally everything I've been told is a lie. That's cool.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
But I do have a theory about Antarctica, and it kind of piggybacks off of, I don't know if you ever saw that movie called Snowpiercer.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So the slaves live in the back, the middle class people are in the middle, and then the high class people are at the front of the train, right?
Yep.
And they serve each other, and then it turns out it's actually Soylent Green type stuff. But my theory is because they like to throw this stuff in our face a lot, hidden in plain sight, as it were. I think Snowpiercer is the story of civilization trying to get to the land that beyond the ice wall because the sun is getting too far away which is why everything's in an ice age in the center of the Earth. And then, cue mud flood and all that stuff. But I think it's a story of them building a train on top of the ice wall, waiting it to thaw, for the sun to go further in front of them until it thaws out, so they can start walking to these other lanes. But that documentary, the moon map,
Yep.
right? The moon is actually a reflection of the true Earth, and there's a map that is overlaid on top of it, and I forget which map it is, but it's literally perfect to the moon's reflection. And I was always kind of wondering, because we're from California, we obviously used to go to Disneyland a lot. The Haunted Mansion, when you walk through the line, they have these concaved faces with an image popped on it. And it's like a little ghost guy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're singing, they're doing their thing. But as you walk by, it follows you. Obviously, it's not following you. It's just an optical illusion.
Right.
But that's what concave images do. It makes it appear. So then I start, okay, well, what if the Earth is concave and it's a map? Right? It's a map for the seasons. I mean, if you don't know that the sky is a clock, right? The sun is what time of day it is. The moon tells you what day it is, and the constellation tells you what season it is. And it resets perfectly every single year.
Yep.
Every year. So, I mean, those types of arguments I love too, because it makes sense. Now, it's just a theory, right? If we're looking at it from the debate side, I don't have any evidence to support that other than it is just true. And a lot of time the globe model likes to use like, well, did you know that with our model you can perfectly predict the constellations? And that I'm like, dude, I can predict the constellations because they don't change.
Yeah, I know.
You're not predicting anything. You're just going off the cyclical cycle that's always been since the dawn of time.
That's it. You take a picture of the sky tonight, next year everything will be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's so many things wrong with their model, like especially when you get into like relativity, special relativity and stuff like that. And Einstein himself is even quoted saying that you cannot determine if the Earth is moving or the sky is moving based on only observations in the sky. But the last point that I was going to make of my 3 proofs is Foucault's pendulum, which, if you don't know what that is, basically it's a weighted wire with a kind of like a pin on the end of it, suspended on a tripod. And what it does is it swings back and forth. It sways back and forth.
Yep.
And they say that this is evidence that the Earth is rotating.
Yeah, it's the one in France, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the problem with this is, how come plumb bobs don't do that? If you don't know what a plumb bob is, basically it looks like a big fishing weight.
Yep.
Tied to a string. We use it in construction all the time.
Yep.
It's to find a perfect
corner,
right? It's to find a perfect 90 degree off a horizontal axis, 90 degrees. It's called plumb, right? Plumb and level, and in my opinion, is ubiquitous, and it's why it's obviously the Earth is not a globe. But plumb bobs don't swing. Foucault pendulums have been seen to swing the wrong way, too fast, not enough, or not at all. So they say that is a claim of the Earth spinning. Now imagine the Foucault's pendulum is attached to the ground, and they're saying that it's suspended, but it's sensing the spin. And this might sound like a dumb question, but you may have heard this about, well, if I hover in a helicopter, why doesn't the Earth just spin underneath me and I land in Japan or whatever?
Right.
They go, oh, it's because the atmosphere is connected to the Earth.
Right.
Right. So you spin with it. The helicopter spins with the atmosphere, with the Earth.
Right. They try to make the argument like if you're on a boat and you jump up in the air and you come right down in the same place, or there's a video of a trampoline on a train and the guy keeps going up and down. That's what they try to compare it to.
Correct. Yeah. But then they put their foot in their mouth again. What about Coriolis effect? Isn't that the apparent deviation by 15 degrees of objects because it's not attached to the Earth and the Earth is spinning underneath it? That's your claim. So do snipers actually have to correct for Coriolis
No.
or not? The answer is no,
Nope.
right? So then how come it wouldn't work for a helicopter? Or how come something that's attached to the Earth, it's suspended, is showing the spin, but it's attached to the Earth, it's not truly suspended like a bullet or a helicopter? Like, their model is garbage.
Absolutely. And I've said many times before, there's military technical manuals, the TMs, that says to treat it as flat and non-rotational. And there's even CIA documents all over the place. You can find them even on Google with Raytheon and all these other agencies that said, treat the Earth as flat. Well, if it is a ball that's spinning, why are we treating it that it's flat and non-rotating?
Oh, dude, you read my mind. I'm telling you, we're best friends now. So something I was going to bring up, because I wrote it down here to make sure I brought it up, and I'm not sure how long you want to go.
It goes as long as you want.
But we shared something on our Instagram page, right? I had to make like a short video of it afterwards, but we shared a video on our page, and it was somebody who had filmed a video on TikTok, right? And then it made its way to Instagram, and we just reshared it. We didn't even make the video. This guy is talking about, think flat Earth is dumb. Well, the government doesn't, neither does NASA. And he pulls up the 1988 definition and derivation of linear model aircraft. In the opening statement, it says, we assume that the Earth is a flat, non-rotating, static atmosphere.
Yep.
We posted that. We get fact-checked. Before we get fact-checked, a USA Today reporter messages our Instagram.
Really?
Yeah, I have the video still. It's up on our Instagram. I'll actually send it to you so you can,
what is your
you can read it.
Can you share your Instagram channel with everybody?
Yeah, it's whiskey_beer_n_conspiracies.
Whiskey_beer_. Oh, I gotcha. And conspiracies.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, I'll share the link in the show description as well, folks. You just got a follow.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
For sure. Yeah. No. So we get the message from the USA Today. She says, "Hey, I'm looking to write a fact check article about it in a clip that was shared. It's being shared on Instagram." And I said, "Yeah, sure. Which clip are you talking about?" Well, this one. And I said, "Okay, what's you're a fact checker. What do you want to know from an electrician and a mechanic? Like, what do you want to know? Like, this is your research here." But anyways, she said, "Well, from the information that I've gathered by talking to some experts in the field, that obviously that document is real. It's a 104-page paper, and they do say that they model it over a flat, non-rotating Earth." But that's just done as a generalization so they don't overcomplicate the math.
What?
And I said, with all due respect, ma'am, you're an intelligent person and a reporter. Does that make sense to you? So we go back and forth a little bit. It comes out a month later, and we hadn't posted anything in weeks, that a video was fact-checked. And I was like, well, we didn't even post anything. I go back a month and pull it up, and it was fact-checked. And the article was linked. And they're talking about, yeah, the report's real. I talked to the university professor, who cares? And they said that, well, yeah, of course. But it doesn't really matter what the Earth does underneath aircraft for a short period of time. Well, first of all, that's wrong. And second of all, you do actually care about what it is doing underneath the airplane because you state it in the report. If you had just negated it, it wouldn't have been an issue. But you're saying we assume that this will work because the Earth is flat, stationary, and non-rotating.
That is so odd. That USA Today would randomly. So do you think that these? Because obviously, look, the newspaper industry is a dying breed. So do you think they're picking up extra money to become fact checkers from big tech? And of course,
100%.
There you go.
100%. 110%. Now here's the kicker. This is what actually made me the most mad about it. Because in my opinion, this is gold. This is gold, right? She said we reached out to the Instagram hosts for comment, and they linked our Instagram page, right? But then never said what we said. She just said we reached out to them for comments. Period. Moving on.
That's incredible.
I was like, I thought you were fact checking. You didn't want to quote what we said, right? And I think it would matter absolutely if I'm going to stick my ass in an airplane, and you've done math, but you didn't want to overcomplicate it, so you just left that part out.
Yeah, just left the whole part
That's
out where they're
ludicrous.
spinning at 1,000 miles an hour at a 23.4 degree angle, and all their scientism. Don't worry about it. Just throw it out the window because it overcomplicates things. Makes no sense.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Coming from the people who claim scientism and are all about the numbers.
Yeah, I actually made this analogy on the show because, as I said, I'm an electrician by trade, and that would be the equivalent of me drawing up a diagram to put in like a transfer switch for something, or a disconnect, which require fuses.
Right.
And I drew it all up for my boss, and I said, "Hey, this is how I want to install it. This is how I want to run it. Does that work for you?" And he's like, "Yeah. What are these little things right here where the fuses? Oh, those are bananas."
Yeah. Don't want to overcomplicate things.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, come on. Let's not look at the minute details here. Like that's essentially what they're doing.
That's incredible. I've heard some pretty insane fact checking stories, but the fact that a random USA Today on Instagram, you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you simply reposted something. So obviously, see, this makes me think that obviously somebody made this video and they tagged it. So I'm assuming you probably weren't the only one. Anybody else who was fact checking it, or I'm sorry, anybody else who was reposting it may have had a visit from the fact checker as well.
Yeah, I did like a Flat Earth week of posting stuff about Flat Earth, and one post we made, I almost started like World War III. I swear people got so upset about it, but yeah, it was weird, man, because it was just so random, and it was interesting because we're kind of like smart asses on our show. It's definitely an adult show, but I don't know if you ever saw that picture that came out from Vice, and they're talking about the cartels fighting Go. And the picture was of a bullet that went through like a bullet hole, but it was the whole bullet. And it was like chaos ensues. And I'm like, well, obviously you don't know how guns work. Because
you mean with the casing and everything on it they showed?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I sent that article to her, and I was like, hey, I was wondering if you could run a fact check about this picture right here. And she was like, well, I don't really do fact checks about that, but she's like, I'll go ahead and forward it over to the appropriate parties to see if they could fact check it.
And I'm sure somebody got back to you the very next day, right?
No.
Of course not.
Nobody's gotten back to me.
No, it's all about the agenda, brother.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why this person randomly decided to do, like you said, like a fact check about a Flat Earth video on Instagram.
Yeah, that is...
Like, that's the level of journalism that you're at? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, and it took her a month to do it too. Jesus Christ!
Really?
Yeah, it took her a month to get back to us and actually post the fact check where it's covered on our Instagram.
Well, that's one of the things that really makes me sad in my old age is I always aspired to be a journalist and kind of what I'm doing now, but at more of a professional level because I really respected journalism. It was always looked at as the unofficial fourth branch of the government, right? It would keep an eye out on the judicial, executive, legislative, right? Keep people in check. But now, like everything else, journalism's been bought and sold and is very much part of the club with the CIA and everything else.
Yeah, without a doubt. And actually, that's why I've been having a greater interest in actually reading like physical copies of books. Then.
Agreed.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I always encourage people to buy the books because once everything goes digital, you're going to see Fahrenheit 451 in a digital version.
Good book.
Yeah.
Scary book, but it was good.
Yeah. It's important. I've got a couple of books. Just buy it. And books you can go on eBay. You can find books like the one you were talking about, the Terra Firma. I think the one you're
Mhm.
talking about, The Earth is Not a Planet, right? From
Yep.
David Wardlow Scott.
Yep.
You can find it on paperback for $13 on Amazon and have it in
Yeah.
2 days.
I mean, there's so many. There's Zetetic astrology. Um, there's anything by Eric Dubay. I really like Eric Dubay. I know there's this like weird thing in the conspiracy realm.
Yeah, I
that,
wish
like,
we'd stop doing that, man.
get labeled a shill or whatever. Now, if you are really truly a shill, then yeah, I think you should be outed as one. But
Yeah.
you got to have circumstance. You got to have evidence to support that claim.
Yeah, I see people who just take a picture of, because there's even truthers out there who won't even put their pictures out there on video, and they'll take a picture of Eric Dubay maybe holding his fingers together speaking. Oh, he made a pyramid sign. He's part of the
Yeah.
Illuminati. I'm like, really? You take up
Yeah.
1 second of a 2-hour video.
Yeah, we always joke about that on the show too. Like, you got to be careful with like what you do with your hands, because like someone's gonna screenshot this and then.
Yeah. Well, you said you're
Make a video
33,
and-
so I'm pretty sure you're a Freemason.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm actually the highest you can be.
That's right. People are so quick to, but yeah, if you're a shill, obviously. But I think sometimes people just look for content. Will look for the silliest things to kind of jump
Yeah.
on.
I'll throw stones in glass houses, man.
Yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. Is there anything else in the flat Earth realm that we haven't really talked about that you wanted to mention?
Other than the biblical aspect about it, as I said before, like I'm Christian, right? But I really read the Bible literally, unless of course I understand that it's a parable.
Right, like
I
the
can
Book of
discern
Proverbs.
between the two. Yeah, right, exactly. Or the prodigal son.
Yeah.
Obviously that actually did happen, but there was a lesson in it. These types of things.
Yep.
Now, earlier we discussed, everything pretty much that we've been told to us is a lie. So I would be naive to believe that everything that was written in the Bible either has been manipulated or changed or removed. So I have to do my best discernment to make sure that what I'm reading is truthful, and I believe it to be, and then also not assume that what they're writing is something out of lack of intelligence or anything like that. Because, I've asked pastors, why do you think they took the book of Enoch out of the Bible?
Right.
And they're like, oh, because he wasn't ordained by the Lord, or it wasn't ordained by the Lord. I'm like, yeah, but isn't he the only one to not suffer the penalty of death because he was so holy? Well, yeah, I mean, technically, so I read both. I've read the Quran. I have the Quran in my house.
Yep.
But I read Genesis literally. Like, literally, God created the heavens and the earth.
Yes, sir.
But
Yeah.
forgot to put the sun first and then spin it around the earth.
Exactly. And
There must have been another verse, chapter 8. And then God decided to make planets and name them after all false demigods.
right.
Like, and in the religious world, I feel like a lot, if I have this conversation, they usually give the same answer as of either one, you're diminishing the power of God, which I would adamantly disagree with.
Right.
But second, it's always like, don't you think that that's just kind of their understanding of what they wrote? I'm like, dude, do you believe in the Bible or do you not? Because you don't get to cherry pick
Mm-mm.
out what you believe and what you think that this is probably how they interpreted that. Like, I don't think that's how it should work. Because if your guide to how to be here is the Bible, then do you believe it or do you not believe it? And I just find a lot of a hardship in the Christian community, especially, because that's the one that I can speak on. That there's so much distaste for entertaining an idea that if I read this literally, he literally said a greater light to rule the night, or a greater light to rule the day, and a lesser light to rule the night, and put them in the firmament,
That's right.
and separated the firmament from the waters above and below. I mean, go to Auguste Piccard. I don't know if you know who Auguste Piccard is.
Yeah, he's the gentleman that the Popular Science magazine from 1930 or 31. He went way up and he saw the ends of the earth actually curl up.
Yes. When he was asked about it, he said, "What the medium that I determined that I was in was fluid-like."
Yep.
His son, interestingly enough, set the record for the deepest submarine dive at that time, to which he described, supposedly again, that he couldn't go past where he was because it was almost like he was hitting a barrier. Now, there was actually a commercial about this. It was like, I think it was like an alcohol commercial, maybe, where they're showing Auguste Piccard on the balloon going up, seeing a flat Earth, and then bursting through what looked like an animation of glass and then popping into the ocean. And then the camera flips upside down, and it's his son going down in the submarine. Right? Even that as above, so below stuff.
Right. The
But
waters.
so I read that literally, right? And there's like 150 plus verses that suggest the earth is flat. When I read that, oh man, I'm going to sound dumb. Was it Isaiah that asked the Lord to keep the sun and the moon from moving? I think it was Isaiah. Could be wrong. Anywho, prophet who asked God, let the sun and moon stand still in the sky so I can have revenge on my enemies. And they said, yeah, this was, first of all, it's documented, but the witnesses said, yeah, the sun and moon stood still. I read that literally, because if I read that literally, that means that we're not spinning around the sun, because you don't have to stop the sun if the sun's not moving.
Exactly. You could have just stopped the earth, right?
Yeah, right. And of course, a lot of Christians, I'll say that at least the ones that I've talked to, are like, oh, that's not what they meant. Well, you probably wore a mask in church too, didn't you?
Yeah, you simply can't. And that's another thing I wanted to mention that really changed my view on when I actually accepted, the flat earth. And I did learn to read the Bible literally, right? Mm-hmm. It all made sense. It all came together.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's other theological things that I kind of get into with the Bible and stuff like that. I'm like what you would consider a post-trib. Not to say that the tribulation won't happen or anything like that. I just believe that we'll all be here when it does happen. I don't think the rapture is biblical. That's just how I read it. But, not to turn it into some like a religious.
No, for sure. And going back to what you mentioned before, I've wrestled with that too, and I never get a good answer from preachers. I find it odd because I'm very much into numerology and numbers. Right. It says in the Bible that God created the earth with numbers, and I forget the verse, but he did mention numbers, and numbers have meanings. Even Manly P. Hall mentioned about numbers and symbols. When people figure these things out, a great veil will fall upon mankind. And why is there 66 books in the Bible? When you look at the other, what is it, Maccabees, Enoch, there's a total of 4, which would be 70 books, which really makes more sense to me. And Enoch, again, he didn't die. He was, brought into heaven by God. And how is that not important? And when you really, again, we bought Enoch on hardcover. We have a nice copy. When you really read that, you really, truly understand. It really does a great job of explaining, going along with Genesis. It's a great read along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Piggybacks right off.
Yeah, it really does. And it's a great book to read. I encourage people to read it. And I know I'll get slammed for saying that by a few people, but that's just me.
That's fine. Well, I don't think reading a book makes you a bad person.
No, of course not. Right? But there's some people that are, that's the Bible. And again, this is a book that's 2,000 years old that's gone through several hands, and we don't know.
Some evil hands.
Evil hands, right. And I do think there is something to the book of Enoch and Maccabees, etc. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, as far as the book goes, I mean, you read it for yourself and then make that discernment, but nobody can deny the fact that they did take books out of the Bible at the Council of Nicaea.
Yep.
Right, so
that's right.
To refute one book that kind of seems to fit right after Genesis and then tells, I think, the additional story to who these people really are, and it's that fallen angel, that Nephilim blood, that bloodline continued on. And we see it here today, and obviously it survived the flood with Moses' daughter-in-laws and all that good stuff. I always make that joke with my wife because she's Rh negative, O negative, which is an extremely rare blood type. But that Rh negative factor I actually read a report that said that scientists actually don't know where that comes from because it comes from three entities. Seems to be a man, a woman, and then something spiritual that's not like recognized on Earth.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, see, honey, you got that damn angel blood in you. That's why she always has all these issues. No, I tease her.
Yeah, the First Council of Nicaea. I always say that Constantine, he was a guy who kind of mixed a lot of things together, right? He wanted the pagans and the Christians to kind of come together. So, I think he really created the Diet Coke of the Bible. He kind of softened it up, and I think he was more. You hear all kinds of stories. We don't know. This happened 1,700 years ago, right? Happened in the early 4th century, 320, 325, something like that. So, but this guy, from all the things I've read, he was very much trying to bring the Christians and the pagans together. So he kind of softened up some things and brought them together. What's your reading on that?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And who knows how many Constantines were before that and after that,
Right, right.
right?
Good.
Flat Earth to me is tip of the iceberg, and then everything kind of falls underneath that.
Yeah.
But the editing of the Bible at the Council of Nicaea, for sure. And I don't, if anybody's upset at George, don't be upset because
No.
it's just a book.
Right,
Holy
right,
cow!
right.
Like I have Mein Kampf in my house. Does that make me a Nazi? No. I have the Communist Manifesto. I've read that too. Trash. Doesn't mean, it's education.
Yep.
You have to read. I think you have to educate yourself on both sides. And this is what's interesting to bring it back to flat Earth is that the people that believe in the globe model know nothing about it.
Nope.
Like, unless they do it as like a YouTube channel or something like that, they know nothing about it. And the weird question I find so odd to me is that if you were to say, hey, did you know the Earth's flat? And they're like, oh, really? So then how does Uranus work? I'm like, what are you talking about? What does something above us have to do with what we stand on? It's like, how does flat Earth work? Or, the Earth is flat. And they'll be like, well, how does the whole universe operate? I'm like, that's not even a valuable question.
And even the people who call you stupid, they don't even know their own model. If you stood out in front of a Walmart, asked 100 people how many miles away the sun was, how many think would get it right?
Right, exactly.
5?
That's generous, George. That's generous. You could even ask simple questions like this, like, okay, they say that the moon is 238,000 miles away at its farthest, right? The largest crater on the moon is called Tycho, and it measured 50 miles wide. That's according to them, not me, right? The farthest you can see with the human eye on a good day, if you're at sea level, is 3 to 3.5 miles. But I can see something 50 miles wide, 238,000 miles away with my naked eye. Can you explain to me how that's physically possible? Dude, you're not on our level yet. See what I did with the level there?
By the way, level 2 comes out next month, April 20th, I think, or April 22nd.
Yeah. We actually had Hibbler on our show too one time.
Awesome.
We've had Flat Earth Dave on our show. Yeah, it's been a journey, man. It's been
he's a real good dude. And I kind of wanted to ask you, how long did you have your podcast going before you actually introduced Flat Earth to your audience?
probably 2 years, maybe a little over. And I made a presentation and presented it to Chris and Boya, our co-hosts, because they didn't know what I knew, and I would bring it up, and they're like, "Dude, we believe in some crazy stuff, right? But that's nuts." And you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And if you go all the way back to like season 2, they would kind of poke fun at me and tease me about it, which never bothered me. But now they're like, NASA's pretty dumb. I don't feel the spin. I don't know, man. I definitely can see too far. You're right. I didn't know that 99% of all worldwide communication comes through fiber optics. I didn't know that all satellite dishes for your TV point south to they'll say a tidally locked satellite in a place that can't exist because it violates second law of thermodynamics. But see, to the layman, if you're worried about where your next meal's coming from, how to keep a roof over your head, um, you both have to work because you don't make enough, and you got to find someone to watch the kid, and you can't afford the babysitter, and grandma's sick, and if you're worried about that stuff, I totally understand why you would not go research what I said when I said the Earth is a pressurized system and cannot exist next to a zero pressure system without entropy taking over because of gas law, which is a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. I get why you wouldn't be like, who cares? I'm hungry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I understand that.
Yep.
And I think that system is done on purpose.
Oh, for sure.
Right. I know I've said this on the show. I've had a discussion about it with my wife because my wife is a stay-at-home mom. We're very blessed. She was not necessarily open to the idea at first, because she was kind of raised without a mom, and her dad taught her and her sisters, hey, you got to be a strong, independent woman. You're on your own when I'm at work. You guys got to be that. And then there's nothing wrong with that. But it's also important to recognize in society that the two family income is a communistic ideology.
Yep.
We get two for the price of one, and the state raises your kid.
That's right. And
then they've
go ahead. Sorry, brother.
I was just gonna say they've made this system so controlled that it's hard to get out of those places. And I'm not knocking anybody that can't do it. I know it's hard, and it's a shame that society has come this far to where both parents have to work. You have to, essentially let the state raise your kid because you can't put them in a private school because you can't afford it. You can't afford to stay at home. It's a rat race. It's a never-ending cycle of endless revenue for the government. As we talked about earlier, is just running black ops and doing all these crazy things around the world.
Yeah, and back in, was it the 50s and 60s when the controlled feminism push, right, to get women into the workforce, that was all part of the plan. And there was another really good thing that I had, and it completely just vanished from my little brain. What I was going to bring up in reference to the whole, the other thing was, I do think that the controllers, the hidden hand, realized at about I would say the fall of 2021, that people were really starting to figure out their lie. And I think that's part of the reason why they went forward with the Ukraine-Russia thing in February of 2022, the hyperinflation. All this is just more distractions and to stress you out more and to make your dollar less, which means you have to work more, which gives you less time to look into things like what we're talking about tonight.
Exactly. So I think that's another reason, why we take the show, seriously. Obviously, like if you listen to our show, it's for sure don't listen to it with, kids. We have adult language on there. And some of the topics are a little rough, especially when you start getting to the occult and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we try to add some levity to the situation. We make jokes and stuff like that about it, but that's why we hold it to such a high standard, because we want to make sure the information that's getting out there, because you may only have an hour and a half, 2 hours a day out of your busy rat race circle to actually gain some true information, because you're starting to wake up. And not to say everyone has to go like super hard in the paint if you have your own show or want to start a show, but just realize that someone out there is going to maybe listen to what you have to say, and maybe that's what gets them through the day. So, talk about something that is positive, uplifting. Before you gotta get mad first, but then, you start looking for truth, and it's just you just start benefiting your own life. Like ever since my wife started eating non-GMO, organic, gluten-free, no antibiotics, any of this stuff, it costs more, but we agree that at least we're willing to pay more so we know what's going in our bodies. And we can share that message with other people, because you really don't know how polluted this matrix is. If it's not the food, it's the water. If it's not the water, it's the air, it's the grass, it's the meat, it's the antibiotics, it's the chemicals, it's the, GMO, it's this, it's that, it's the vaccines. You can only control your environment for so long. So, when you get put out there in the world that's so polluted, have your best, defenses up.
Yeah.
And sharing that information, I think, is why is just I'm having a great time with it, man. I really enjoyed this conversation too, by the way.
I did too. I've been so blessed. I asked you earlier, how long did it take you to bring it up on your podcast? Because when I did on mine, I think it was a little over a year in, and I had David Weiss on, and I just remember waking up the next morning, and I wasn't near the numbers I have today, but I just remember waking up and I had hope for you. You were on the ball. What is wrong? Just email after email. And still to this day, anytime I bring it up, you'd get the one or two. And it's not that I care. I just don't want to, I don't know. Anyway, I made the decision. I thought personally it was very important. And I knew there was a flat earth community. So I thought to myself, I'll still bring it up. I still do talk about it on the other podcast, but I wanted it featured because it was that important to me. And
Right.
it was the right thing to do because I'm blown away of how many people are willing and are out there. Obviously, people are curious because, I mean, when you're getting, 30,000 downloads a month, and we just started it at the end of November 30th, there's people out there. And I get
Right.
more emails now than I do for my other podcast.
Yeah.
It is definitely something that is eye-opening. There's a lot of people that are, I think, finally considering that, this guy's been telling us for the last 3 or 4 years that everything is a lie. Maybe, just maybe, this whole globe thing is a lie. And it's worth, to me, it was worth, quote unquote, coming out of the closet for, because you do get those emails that I got 2 this week that said that they were going through different struggles in their life. They were questioning their faith, and they kind of came across the podcast and it gave them new meaning. And those are the type of emails you get. You're like, wow, this, this effort is truly worth the time and effort.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of weird because when you come to the realization that is actually provable and it's right before your eyes,
Yep.
it's almost like a weight gets lifted off of you. Because then I think it kind of like scrapes a little bit of plaque off your pineal gland, right? That you start looking at things and you go, man, well, what about that? What about this? I know what I'm on. I know I can't get out of here. I accept that.
Yep.
So what about everything else around me? If there's a very specific reason why they wanted us to stand 6 feet apart, because it's outside the toroidal field. It's measurable. Every human illuminates this thing called the toroidal field. It's just outside of 6 feet. That's why they wanted you at 6 feet. I mean, they tried to convince you that stickers kept you safe. Right? And I highly doubt the guys that were working at the grocery store having to wear like freaking chemical suits all day were actually measuring out exactly 6 feet and putting the sticker there.
That's right.
He always made this joke about like, what happens if I'm 5'11" and 17/16? Like, do I die? Do I catch it? My wife and I didn't get sick the whole time.
Nope, we didn't either. And I remember the president of the United States supposedly telling us in November of 2021 that the people who didn't get vaccinated are going to be a winter of death. We were all going to be
A winter of still waiting, dude.
Yeah,
It's
and
like
it's
a couple winters ago now.
Yeah, and it's just.
Yeah, it's real winter out here.
Do you remember back in 2020 being in the grocery store and sneezing, like everybody hit the ground like a grenade went off?
Oh yeah, dude. It's like someone yelling cops at a high school party. It's, and that was the shame, when we moved out here. Because being from California, it's a different environment, it's a different culture, right? We moved out here and we were kind of culture shocked at first because we'd be in the grocery store and somebody would just walk by, hey, how you doing today? Being from California, you're like, is this person gonna rob me? I don't know them. Why are they saying hi to me? But it was just that type of new culture that we weren't used to. And COVID ruined it. People don't act the same way prior to COVID.
No, there's still people that don't like to hug, don't like to shake hands. And, the poor kids, the class of 2020, they'll never have that, the proms.
Oh,
that stuff is stuff I
grad
think
night.
about.
Yeah.
It's just terrible, man.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
I did want to ask you one more thing, and you've
Sure.
Again, I want to thank you so much for your presentation on Flat Earth and your book, which is going to be awesome. I can't wait. Is that self-published, or is it going to be on Amazon Kindle KDP? Or
No, it'll be on Amazon as long as they let it. In the event that doesn't take place, we'll find a way to have it self-published.
Yeah, make sure when you do, give me that link, and I'll definitely put it out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did want to ask you something a little off topic, but we went across it earlier because I've been kind of deep diving on Alex Jones and his involvement in these recent court cases. And what was it, like $1 billion, basically
something ridiculous. Yeah,
something just outlandish. Do you think number one, I do think, do you think he's part of the, control system? And number two, was that just another version of January 6th to get people not to talk about it anymore?
Yes. Next question.
Okay. That's what I thought.
No. Yeah. 100%. Because if you actually add up the total sum of money that they were awarded by a civil court, you have to sell like 10 of like the top 20 Fortune 500 companies and Apple, and you'd still owe them money. So why not just say he owes them $1 kajillion? It'd be the same thing.
Yeah, like Dr. Evil.
They're never right. Yeah, $100 billion. Right, they're not going to get that money. They'll never get the money. And it was just a warning to people: stop talking about it.
Yeah,
that's all it was. It was January 6th. It was. Oh man, I had another one that was really good. We talked about it earlier, actually. Oh, taxes, right?
There's
another Wesley Snipes.
Yep.
That's all that was, right? And now, dude, now people in the conspiracy world are afraid to talk about it.
It has disappeared, even off the alt channels, like the Rumbles, or even the BitChutes, the new tubes, the huge tubes or whatever. You're really hard pressed. And there was some pretty deep dive, 4-hour deep dive videos onto the subject. And you want to talk about ghost, man. Everybody abandoned ship.
Yeah. I followed that case from the time it started to the time they stopped talking about it. And I had my mind made up then because I saw all of it.
Well, I was in the military for 24 years, and the very second I saw the FBI agent holding a weapon by the magazine, that was it for me, man.
Oh boy. Yeah.
That was
that.
It for
I mean,
me.
you could even say that about a lot of these ones that have taken place.
Yeah.
Or even the Route 99 shooting.
Yeah.
That was kind of near and dear to me because when we lived in San Diego, we used to go to a country bar all the time, and a lot of people that we would go to the bar with were at that concert when it happened. And to look at the photo that they showed up of Stephen Paddock, and it's just this one where he's like making duck lips and he's like winking in his face. I'm like, that's the best photo you could find of the guy that did this giant massacre. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And all these things that just never add up. But yeah, about the Alex Jones thing, for sure. Yeah, I don't. That was a show trial, is all it was.
For sure. Last question I want to ask you, and I always ask people going out the door, is what can we do to turn the tide? Is there anything we can do to turn the tide? Is the monster too big? What are your thoughts on basically when people ask, what do we do? What is your answer to people?
Well, some people like living in the Matrix. Some people just want their steak to taste like steak.
True.
And for those ones, I don't think there's anything that can be done because they're perfectly content with the reality in which it presents them. Right?
Yeah.
Truman Show, shout out. But in my opinion, I actually think that AI is going to be the great disclosure. And I think they're already having trouble with it. I've seen some interesting chat, what's it called? Chat GT or Chat GP.
Yeah.
Asking some interesting questions about the Holocaust. And artificial intelligence is kind of kicking out answers that do not match the official narrative. Not because it knows more than the rest of us, but because it's logically doing computing about specific numbers and dates and times and what was recorded and what was reported and saying, no, that's not possible. Or I think that there's going to be a disclosure about flat Earth. I honestly, I do. I think the AI will get too far ahead of them, and they will not be able to limit the amount of information that it kicks out. Um, no, I don't think that'll happen tomorrow. I think what they'll slowly start to do is disclose the fact that yes, we've always known that the Earth is flat, until they can try to distract or brainwash people enough to forget the fact that we ever were taught that it was a globe. Um, but that's high hopes, right? That's high hopes, and I
Right.
don't support AI. I'm just there's good and bad, just like the internet.
Absolutely. And that's technology as a whole, right? I mean, here we are, two people, different parts of the country having a conversation that will be listened to people all around the world. That's wonderful. At the same time, like you said earlier, you just share something, and all of a sudden, a few hours later, you have somebody from USA Today hunt you down, fact checking you.
Yeah, right,
It's
right. I guess that means we're kind of famous or something. I don't know.
there you go. You're obviously a big fish in the big pond, and
Yeah,
you're
that's right.
obviously basically you're rocking the house enough to get attention, and that's all we can do at this point, right? If you're catching people, like when I got kicked off PayPal, at first I was very upset. Then I thought, well, I got somebody's attention.
Yeah, yeah. We were kicked off YouTube. We were demonetized before we were ever monetized, and then we were kicked off for a video during COVID where I said that if you take vitamin C and get plenty of sunlight, you'll probably be just fine, and they flagged it as medical misinformation. Um, we've been locked out of our Facebook account for 2 years now. When it first happened, they said usually takes about a day, but because of COVID and understaffing, it could take a little bit longer. That was 2 years ago, so I guess we're over the target.
Yeah, how dare you talk about vitamin C and sunshine like that? Don't you know that the only way that you're going to get through COVID is through the vaccine?
That's right. Yeah.
How dare
And
you?
now they're normalizing it, which is very interesting because
Yes.
I saw a video just the other day where there was a commercial, heard a commercial on the radio where this woman was selling it was an ad for life insurance, and she was like, "My brother-in-law just died suddenly and left his wife and kids without any plan. That's why I told my husband we should get life insurance." And I'm like, "What do you mean he died suddenly? We live in crazy land right now."
Yeah, wasn't it insane how they tried to normalize sudden adult deaths? Like it went from SIDS to SADS, and they just tried to normalize it. Like perfectly healthy athletes were dropping dead at the age of 22.
Oh yeah, I mean we've done clips on our show about all these reports that come out, well, like why video games can cause cardiac arrest, or
Getting not enough
why too
sleep
much.
can cause a death.
Yeah, right. Yeah, while I don't know if you saw the article that said that traffic collisions are elevating due to the unvaccinated.
Yes, I did see that.
And I was like, how do you even what do you tell what? So in my opinion, when I hear something like that or I read something like that, in my opinion, flat Earth not even that crazy.
Yeah, 100%. All the things that's come out over the last 3 years, there's nothing close to come to flat Earth that these people, right? Trying to convince people that a 9-year-old should have a sex change versus flat Earth. Are you kidding me?
Right, right. One of them's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to call tonight. I hope we can do this again in the future. You've been
Sure.
just a fantastic guest, and you've been really generous
Thank
with
you.
your time. And again, I'll give you the floor on the way out. Any last comments, words of wisdom, and plug anything you'd like on the way out, sir?
Yeah, man, I want to thank you for having me. This was a fun conversation. I like having these conversations, especially about flat Earth. Words of encouragement for anybody out there. If you didn't understand any things that I was saying, I would say don't stress too much about it. Keep climbing that ladder of information and research and asking questions, and diversify the information and where you get it, because that's very, very helpful, I think, to see both sides. Our show, Whiskey, Beer, and Conspiracy Podcast, is available pretty much on all podcasting platforms. We have the video version on Spotify, also on Rockfin, Twitch, Odyssey, Rumble. They're all free. We do have like a paid portion of our show. That new website launches 1st of April. Some extra content, stuff like that. We do a show once a week. We do a live show once a month, and I'll send you, George, the links to everything and the link to the pre-order book if anybody's interested in that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, man. I thank you again. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, and I look forward to doing it again. And remember, folks, please check the show description for all the links. And again, our thanks to Big Country for joining us tonight. That's going to be a wrap on episode 28. Episode 29 will come to you. It should drop Sunday morning. We have another guest lined up Saturday night. So again, thank you guys for your continued support of this program. Please support Big Country and continued success with your podcast, brother.
Oh, likewise. Thank you, sir.
You betcha.